Hey YouTubers, Webhead back. Prompted by one of Wolf3118's videos talking about how he may be on the lookout for Supers RPGs in the near future. I wanted to post two videos today to give my opinions on a couple of my recommendations for RPGs in the Supers genre. So here we go with the first one. Mutants and Masterminds, 2nd edition by Green Ronin Publishing. This is a D20 based Supers RPG, but don't let that fool you, because it's actually pretty unique in that it strips away a lot of the artifacts of the D20 system and tweaks the whole thing, rebuilds the whole thing with the fact of recreating a comic book Supers type of game in mind. What it does is Steve Kenson, who had designed the system, had stripped away things like implicit levels, or character levels, character classes, and hit points, among other things, and kind of redesigned the whole thing to remove some of those that wouldn't really make sense in a Supers type of a game. And instead it replaces it with a very, well, I wouldn't say generic, but a generalized, an open-ended character point, or a point-buy type system, where your character's power level, which is usually determined by the GM when he's starting a campaign, tells you how many starting character points your characters have to be built with. And those character points are used to purchase every aspect of the character, from your character's attributes, the skill points and feats that they acquire. Yes, just like other D20 games, Mutants and Masterminds has feats that you can purchase, and you spend your character points on your character's powers, and also some of the other abilities like improving your saving throws, your combat offensive and defensive modifiers, and things like that. And so, just to give a general idea, the power level scale as presented in the core book is done from 1 to 20, kind of similar to most other D20 games and D&D in particular, with 1 representing the very bottom rung, sort of your average citizen, somebody that you would just encounter on the street. Power level 10 being the recommended starting power level for most of your most general Supers campaigns, and that represents kind of maybe your X-Men, Avengers type of power level. And then it goes all the way up to 20, which represents your cosmic entities, your Silver Surfer, Galactus, and these really, really powerful beings. And you can even go beyond that. The progression system is very simple and streamlined, so it's easy to extrapolate what power levels 21, 25, 29 would look like, and how many points they would give. As an example, for the starting or the recommended starting power level of 10, characters are given 150 power points, and those power points, as I said, were spent across all the aspects of that character. And so, in an example, just like other D20 games, it uses a core of 6 stats: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And when you're building a starting character, all of those attributes default to a score of 10. So you have a score of 10, which means, per the D20 system, that you have a +0 modifier. So you would roll a D20 and you would add, whatever your modifier would be versus a difficulty number. So in Mutants and Masterminds, say you wanted to have a super strong character and you wanted him to start with a strength score of 30, then it would cost, basically for the attributes, it costs 1 point per point that you want to add to each attribute. So to buy a strength score of 30, it would cost 20 of your character's starting points. Base of 10 plus 20 points gives you a 30 score, which equates to a +10 modifier in the D20 system. So whenever you're using your strength, you'd roll a 20-sided die, you add your +10 modifier versus whatever the difficulty number would be. And in the case of strength, it influences your character's melee combat damage, so if you strike somebody, the interesting thing about the damage mechanic in here, since it doesn't use hit points, is damage is essentially another saving throw. So you have a special save called Toughness, And when somebody attacks you, in the case of, let's say, a character with 30 strength, the default difficulty of the saving throw is a 15 plus the damage bonus of the attack. So if somebody was to strike with a 30 strength, was to strike somebody, the attack difficulty to avoid taking any damage at all would be the 15 plus his 10 modifier for a DC of 25. Now it's got a scaling system so that just simply failing the toughness save doesn't necessarily mean that your character is rendered unconscious or defeated, but the amount that you fail by is how badly injured your character was. So if you fail by 1 to 4 points, then it might be just a minor bruising or stun that just kind of knocks the wind out of your character, but doesn't leave any lasting effect. Whereas if you fail, by 5 to 9, it can leave your character unable to act for a round. It might cause other conditions or other lasting effects. And if you fail, the more you fail by, and eventually it's possible that you can knock somebody out with a single hit if they roll very poorly on their damage save, or on their toughness save, excuse me. So, but it's a very robust system, and it's about as math heavy as I generally would want a role-playing game to get. Not because any of it is terribly complicated, because it follows the simple D20 formula, where everything is essentially rated as a modifier, so that you would roll a D20 and add your modifier to. Even your powers are all ranked, or are all scaled by power rank. So if you have a rank 10 power, that generally means that if it's a damaging power, that the rank becomes its modifier. So if it was rank 10, it would do plus 10 damage. If it was a defensive power like armor or force field or something like that, its rank gives you a bonus to your toughness saves whenever it would apply, etc., etc. Anytime that you make power checks for certain types of powers, like a sensory power, say if you have supervision, if you have a rank 5 supervision, generally the way that the power system and ranks work is that the rank of the power applies a bonus to making any checks with that power. So if you had a rank 5 supervision, and you would apply a +5 bonus whenever you're using your supervision to whatever skill checks you'd be making, spot checks or whatever it is. The book, the layout of the book is very beautiful. It's gorgeous, full color interiors, and they do a really nice thing. Here's an example of the skills section, where basically they create these really easy to read headings. Like each skill you can see is highlighted in green, so you can tell where a skill description starts and where it ends. And in a similar fashion, or they do that in a similar fashion in the feats section, so you can see it's easy to tell, okay, this is 1 feat, this is another feat, this is a 3rd feat, this is a 4th feat. So it makes the whole book a breeze to read through. It's very easy, it's very well organized. The powers are done in a similar fashion, where they give you a general heading right here that tells you the name of the power. Then it tells you all the applicable rules for that power, all what action it requires to use and everything. And then it gives you a description of what it does. And then the beautiful thing about Mutants and Masterminds is that all powers are modifiable. There are extras and flaws that you can use to add either additional kind of advantages, abilities, or links to powers, or flaws that generally make them more complicated in their use or might make them more limited in some way. And then there are power feats, which are essentially special feats that are minor kind of tweaks to powers or alternate kind of ways that a power can be used, but they're less expensive than adding a full-blown extra. The book is filled with professional quality full-color art all throughout that's really evocative of a supers game, and it kind of focuses on it kind of focuses on a sample group of characters, well, a sample setting, which is as depicted on the cover as well, is Freedom City, which is really an amalgam setting based on a lot of influences from DC Comics and Marvel Comics and all other comics kind of thrown together. And it's Steve Kenson's homage to a lot of his favorite comic books as a kid. But as you can see, there's every chapter even begins with a full color spread. It's all beautiful artwork all throughout. I highly recommend this game if you don't mind kind of a rules crunchy rules medium to rules heavy type of a game. To leave you with a very apt quote, I think, that describes Mutants and Masterminds. For those who are familiar with Hero System, I've often heard it said that that Mutants and Masterminds does 90% of what Hero System does with about half the work. So is it as detailed as Hero System? Can you do quite as much and in as much depth as you can do in Hero System? Honestly, no, not quite, but it's darn close. You can get really complicated with your characters if you want to, but the system doesn't require it. And even when you do so, it's all in a very streamlined, very easy to access fashion. So I highly recommend Mutants and Masterminds. I will be coming back with a review of Bash,